Hello and welcome to this special discussion on a book by Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay. Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay has been a journalist for now probably 36 years. Am I right, Nilanjan?
Well, since 82, my
82,
first
yeah.
byline.
So, and it also so happens that I met Nilanjan in 1983 as a journalist. We were together. We wrote for a publication, and subsequently we followed the trail of the Ayodhya movement. Subsequently, covered organizations like Vishwa Parishad, RSS. Of course, I left off, but Nilanjan has been on that track for all these years. So today we are here to discuss his book called the RSS Icons of the Indian Right. So very relevant for our times, because it is these icons who have made the Hindu right what it is. They have made the BJP what it is. They have made other satellite organizations like Vishwa Parishad, etc., what they are. So today we will discuss with Nilanjan through these personalities how the Hindu right has evolved over the last 60-70 years and where it is today. Welcome to
Thank you, Venu.
our show, Nilanjan. So the first question I want to ask you is, you have studied these personalities, right? Now, which personalities of these fascinate you the most?
You know,
If I just name two or three.
Question of fascination does not arise. Fascination means that you admire somebody.
Okay.
I don't look at the Sangh Parivar from a perspective of admiring them. I look at it from a very critical perspective.
Yeah.
You were talking to Ayodhya.
Yeah.
I have, suddenly for a brief moment went back 33 years ago, around the time when you and I separately went to Ayodhya for the first time after the Babri Masjid locks were
I
opened
went
in
when the
50.
lock was opened. Yeah.
Yes. So I remember the very early stages. We used to have these disagreements, especially you and I, where you would say, "Come on, these guys don't have much steam. They're peaking too early."
I always thought.
And I would always say, that no. So I doggedly kept on, thinking that this is going to be the political thing to watch out.
Yeah.
Something to
Yeah,
look
you
forward
proved
to.
right. You said this has much more stamina than people are giving.
Yes,
giving it credit for.
Yes. And I do remember, a lot of things which has happened. This is my fourth book. My first one was written immediately after the demolition of the Babri Masjid. At that time, wrote it in almost a year after the demolition of the mosque. Thereafter, the Modi book. So, they have all different personalities. This is actually a cricket team.
Yeah.
There are 11 personalities who are put it. So I say the cricket team in the sense that
This also reminds me, when I read your book, Nilanjan, it also reminds me of a relay race. It's almost like Hedgewar handing over the baton to Golwalkar after
exactly
having a long tenure, handing over to Balasaheb Deoras, and then how it goes on and on.
If you read this book, you will find that in this book there is a lot of it which comes through these personalities right from the time, even before the RSS was established in 1925. There is a certain period of history of the Indian right wing. There is also substantial.
You mentioned that Hedgewar was part of the Congress movement, and then he comes out of it.
And there is a prehistory also to the Hindu right wing. Which actually started from the time of Tilak. From the late 19th century. From that time onwards, we do find the early traces of Hindu nationalistic politics emerging. So that has been there. The RSS formation in 1925 was, of course, the formalization of the process by Hedgewar. But Hedgewar did not think of forming the RSS on its own. The idea came to him from V.D. Savarkar's manuscript, Hindutva, who are we, who are the Hindus? So it has been a continuous process. There have been different people. This book does go into Hedgewar. It profiles Shama Prasad Mukherjee, again a very important person who was not RSS formally.
I find Golwalkar would be the most important link between all these people.
They are all different links. Various people did various things. Savarkar provided with the basic germ of the idea. Hedgewar gave the basic organizational structure. Golwalkar insulated it from any kind of
Savarkar
moral
gave the
decay.
seed of political Hindutva, right?
Well, yes, he is the one who conceptualized the idea that of political Hinduism, who actually codified political Hinduism. That is
And what it means.
What it means.
The whole idea of Pitra Bhumi and Punya Bhumi, right?
Yes,
that was his
basic idea. There's a
formulation,
lot of it which goes in. Hedgewar gave it a structure, what it is going to be. It is going to be a heavily patriarchal thing, something from which women are going to be just merely add-ons. They will not be main part of the main structure of the RSS. Even today, women are not members of the RSS. They can be associated with one of the affiliated organizations, either the Rashtriya Sevika Sangh or various other Durga Vahini, which are the ones which have come up in the recent years.
I want to,
there is Golwalkar who's been the satsang chalak for the longest period, from 1940 to 1973. Now, after that, Devras, 73 to 94, that's another 21 period.
That's a long, that
is also the period, which hit Devras, the decision why I possibly decided to spend the longest chapter in this book on Devras, because he's been the least studied one. Because whenever we talk about the RSS, we generally,
and he's the most political of the RSS
in today's context. If today I see, if quite often it is asked that if today's BJP or today's RSS that you see, who do you find the most in it? So, if say for instance, if you take Narendra Modi and Amit Shah, they are some kind of synthesis of Savarkar and Devras. They have elements of Savarkar, very symbolically emphasized by Modi to go and garland his portrait in Parliament immediately after becoming Parliament. Amit Shah does not get himself photographed without the picture of Savarkar on his head.
Yeah.
So that shows that how much of a Savarkarite he is. Quite paradoxical, because Savarkar was never part of RSS.
Yeah, he was.
Even after he was released from jail.
And you're right. Many of them were more associated with Hindu Mahasabha.
Hindu Mahasabha. Hindu Mahasabha was a more political outfit.
And there was your books suggest that there was some sort of sibling rivalry initially between RSS and Hindu Mahasabha also. I mean,
much more than sibling rivalry. It was not an Anil Ambani, Mukesh Ambani clash. There was much more fundamental, in fact, to the extent that
in fact, Golwalkar says that we don't want Hindu Mahasabha influence in the RSS. He mentioned in a chapter, he says that.
We quote this, there is this very oft repeated sentence of Savarkar. He said that the epitaph of the RSS would be that, of an RSS worker would be that he lived here, spent his time here and did nothing. Ended up doing nothing. So that is what he felt. He was in favor of a more direct involvement in politics. Whereas
Golwalkar was more like spiritually oriented and
spiritually oriented is not the way.
I mean, you mentioned the word sattvic.
Yeah,
he was not rajasic and more sattvic.
Yes, right. And he was more inclined to consolidating and strengthening Hindu society from within. His more target was the enemy other, which is that the Hindu society, Hindu Samaj, has to be refurbished and
also, Nilanjan, I want to, during the British, before we got independence, you bring this out very clearly that Guru Golwalkar was very risk averse, did not want to participate in politics, and also was happy to receive certificates from the Home Secretary during British rule, Home Secretary saying that these people are good, they're not rebels, they're not sort of, they're not hurting the British administration in any way. So that that tells you something about
not just Golwalkar. Even Hedgewar was very risk averse. Like the RSS was formed in the middle of the national movement, the freedom struggle. Now the three main high points of the freedom struggle, the Khilafat non-cooperation movement in 1920, 21, that period, or thereafter Dandi March and the civil disobedience from 1930, 29, 30, 31, that period, and then the Quit India movement. The RSS was not institutionally involved in any of these. But yet, because there was so much of pressure from below that they couldn't prevent the cadre to not but do anything but participate in it.
And here, Nilanjan, you also bring out some tensions between key players on this question, where you say that Balasaheb Devras goes to Golwalkar and says, let me participate in my individual capacity. Right. But then Golwalkar discourages him. So, in a sense, the top leadership is constantly discouraging people who were under pressure to participate in the freedom movement not to participate. They were under pressure not to participate. That's the thing that comes out.
There was one section within the RSS whose heart felt that they had no business to be politically and socially active unless they were participating in the freedom struggle. There was this other section which was the head, which was much more calculative. They felt that we shouldn't, because this is not our movement, that this is the Congress's movement. Exactly. And what the other group would say, that let's participate and take over the Congress from inside. And they almost succeeded in 1949, you know, when the Congress Working Committee passed a resolution when Nehru was away, that the RSS and the Congress could actually work together. That was a resolution which was passed at the initiative of Sardar Patel. But thereafter, when Nehru comes back, he gets that resolution rescinded. So that, yes, there was a plan.
You also mentioned that Golwalkar, in his meeting with Sardar Patel, suggests that RSS people should be sent to Congress party, and there should be a two-way kind of interaction, which is resisted by Nehru later.
You know, the idea of the RSS leadership was at that point was that we need not directly participate in politics. We will RSize the Congress from within.
That was the...
we will take it over. This was resisted by Nehru, and that is the reason as to why Nehru is such an anathema for the RSS even today. That he saw through the designs of what was happening.
So, in a sense, RSS always considered Congress a very strong organization with a very strong DNA, which was in some ways, Congress always challenged them, right? Challenged their idea of India.
One section of the Congress.
One section of the Congress.
You know, if you actually go back,
I'll tell you, you know, there's a thread that I see in your in this argument. Right. When you go to Balasaheb Devaras, you mention that after the 84 riots, Balasaheb Devaras also says that Congress cannot be challenged, and Congress, BJP is in no position, or the opposition in no position, which is constantly fighting amongst each other, Indian opposition. So, he ends up kind of supporting the Congress.
Well, in the 84 elections.
Yeah, when Rajiv Gandhi comes back with a huge...
Look at Rajiv Gandhi. How could Atal Bihari Vajpayee lose from Gwalior, which has been a bastion of the RSS?
So I want you to tell us, readers, what is this relationship between RSS and Congress? Because throughout in all these chapters, different personalities are in some ways obsessed with Congress, whether it's Golwalkar, Savarkar, Devaras. In some ways, they are always looking at Congress as an organization which either should be influenced, or should we have some relationship, not have, should be supported, should we promote our own. Of course, they promoted Jansangh, which later became BJP, but in spite of that, there is a certain engagement or whatever obsession with Congress. What is that?
You know, if you actually, trying to understand this question, you'll have to understand that what used to be the character of the Congress, we have always referred to the Congress as an umbrella organization which had all shades of political opinion, right from the right to the left. There was a very strong center also. If you actually try to understand, go back to the Constituent Assembly debates, specifically on the issue of Hindu court bills. Throughout that Constituent Assembly, the progressive sections within the Congress couldn't get their viewpoint of codifying laws for the Hindu family.
In fact, even the Hindu court bill, they could only go halfway.
They could not.
They got pushed back.
They got pushed back. It got during the Constituent Assembly debates. It couldn't be passed. It happened only subsequent after India became independent, and then we had the constitution. Then it came only through the Hindu court bills which were passed in 1956. Now, that is the classic case as to how one section of the Congress, which is the conservative, ensured that the conservatism does not go away from the Congress. It was this section which the RSS felt needed to be strengthened, and through that we can, because the Congress was already entrenched in nation building and governing the nation, they felt that we would be able to have a direct involvement and influence on politics and governance.
So, the RSS had a dual strategy. One, float your own Jansangh political outfit, at the same time keep your influence within the Congress also wherever possible.
In fact, Golwalkar was totally disinterested in the Jansangh in the initial period. Jansangh was formed because there was pressure from within the cadre itself for a direct political participation, and because of people like Shyama Prasad Mukherjee who had come from the Hindu Mahasabha background and who felt that if the Golwalkar Patel idea of working through the Congress works, then people like Shyama Prasad Mukherjee wouldn't have any space, because by that time they had got alienated from the Congress. Mukherjee, if you remember, had already resigned from the government, on the pact with Pakistan.
Yeah. So tell me, Nilanjan, I'm fascinated by the thread of Ayodhya, the movement. Through all these personalities, one gets the impression that Ayodhya movement was seeded in 1949 when the Murti was placed in December, right? Now, interestingly, the idol gets placed in the Ayodhya in the premises with the help of
all kinds of people.
Hindu Digvijay Nath, the Gorakhpur Mutt, Avedanath's kind of
the spiritual grandfather of Yogi Adityanath.
Yeah, spiritual. I want to say that spiritual grandfather of Yogi Adityanath.
Yeah,
and it had all kinds of Hindutva elements behind,
including people in the bureaucracy.
And one K.K. Nair, who was the district magistrate,
who later on went on to become a Hindu Mahasabha member of Parliament.
And later, I think Jansangh Hindu Mahasabha. Yeah, okay. So in your book, you say that Golwalkar was not very interested in the Ayodhya movement, but the sense one gets is Golwalkar is arrested around mid of after Gandhi's assassination, right?
He is inside, because of the Gandhi assassination case.
But
thereafter let out.
For a whole year after that, through 1948 and 1949 till mid 1949, I find in your chapter on Golwalkar, he is constantly trying to negotiate with various people in the Congress, right?
To get the constitution of the RSS in place.
Basically to get a ban lifted on RSS, his release, and also to fulfill his promise to either Patel or D.P. Mishra through intermediaries that RSS would become
legitimized space
a more transparent organization, right?
Yeah.
Now all that happens and he gets released in say July of I think 1949.
48, then he goes back again, he's in jail for some time. Yeah, but 1949 is when
when the ban is lifted in 1949 on RSS, right?
Yeah.
Within 6 months, the idol gets placed in Ayodhya. Right. Now, is there a connect between this event and that?
No. Ayodhya is happening independent.
Is it happening
The RSS at that point is too limited, not strong enough in the United Province at that time. United Province, Uttar Pradesh was still known as the United Provinces. So it did not have that kind of strength. Ayodhya, whatever was happening there, the local
no, you're right.
We have said it was basically a Hindu Mahasabha and an Gorakhpur Mutt led initiative which had the collaboration of
No, I'm asking you something else.
The RSS has not become very big at that point.
It's not become big at that point.
No.
Nor is Hindu Mahasabha so big. It's a small,
but locally it is significant.
Yes. But the question I'm asking you is, after Golwalkar promises Patel that RSS will not directly indulge in politics, what happens is an affiliate, or not exactly affiliate, but you could argue that a sibling organization.
It's not a sibling organization at that point. That is what I'm trying to explain to you. That the RSS at that point was too small an organization at that particular point. You have to understand that in 92 it might have required thousands of people to demolish the
Golwalkar may not have approved of the idol being placed
I'm not even certain, that at that point, given the kind of the poor information flow at that point, I do not think that he would have had any immediate information, of what was happening there. We have studied the history of Ayodhya. We know that you had also written about it. It required just about 200-300 people to go and install the idols there. For about a week or 10 days before that, there has been Akhand Kirtan going on outside the Babri Masjid, and on that particular night, the people stormed inside and went and placed the idols of what they called Ram Lalla, the child god.
So after that, when do you think the RSS really starts supporting the movement actively?
It is basically Devras who goes through the period of Janata Party and realizes that this is not working out. We have to look at alternates as to how do we increase our influence. So let us look at other options. So he says that BJP, by the time Jansangh has gotten into the Janata Party and come out of it, formed the BJP, Vajpayee thinks at that point that they had a lot of problems because of the association with the RSS. So he says that let me cut the umbilical cord. So there is no reference to integral humanism. It's all Gandhian socialism, which is all hogwash. It's neither Gandhian nor socialism. But nonetheless, there is a message sent to the RSS that we want to stay away from you. I remain a Swayam Sevak, but please don't interfere in our works. Somebody like a Devras at that point, who's astute enough, who sees that there is a potential, because Indira Gandhi is beginning to play religion. This is the time when she starts quoting religion and starts, you have the famous elections in Jammu and Kashmir in 1983.
Yeah.
So that is the time when they start looking at other options, which are the various options. So Ayodhya falls into Devras's lap. Daudayal Khanna, one of the Congress leaders, he again at that particular point raises the Ayodhya issue, which had been forgotten at that point. And Devras and the other RSS leaders feel that this is a good enough issue which can be patronized, and maybe this is going to help us get what we have always wanted to do, which is dominance in Indian politics. So they give the green signal to Ashok Singhal to step out of Karan Singh's Virat Hindu Samaj and then give full leadership and take control of the Ayodhya agitation. That is what happened.
Okay. Karan Singh as in 1982-83.
Yeah, he had this Virat
I find
Hindu
another
Samaj,
very interesting factoid in your book, which is that even Gulzari Lal Nanda resigns and joins Vishwa Hindu Parishad.
Yes,
right?
Yes. These were among the people, this is that same right wing
Within
the
the
Congress, which at that point felt,
and he was Prime Minister for barely, I think.
He was the Prime Minister, on the two
caretaker,
occasions when Nehru died and before Shastri, and after Shastri's death, before Indira Gandhi took over. So that is why he is also included as one of the short-term Prime Ministers of India.
The other interesting fact that you bring out from the archives is how Indira Gandhi, when Golwalkar dies, she issues a statement saying that although she disagreed with him, but he did have a great amount of influence on society, on Hindu society.
I think that is actually symptomatic of a time when Indian politics was far more civil from what it is today. I do not think today's ruling regime would have that kind of civility and courtesy if one of the prominent leaders who is an ideological adversary passes away. I don't expect. So that is Indira Gandhi's, grandeur, if I can use that
generosity.
Word. Generosity, or whichever word you want to say. At heart, that she was a sensitive human being. We have our severe political disagreements with her, especially on issues of imposition of emergency and what the manner in which Punjab and other things.
The other thing that you bring out is, since you yourself say that Balasaheb Devras is the longest chapter, and you also give him credit for really sort of
making the Sangh Parivar a social coalition.
And also in some ways bringing its influence on to bear its influence on politics of the day, and to that end I think he forms a lot of important satellite organizations like Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh, Bharatiya Kisan Sangh. All these things were happened under Devras.
A lot of the expansion and the coordination, the Samanvay,
trade union movement,
which we keep on saying. No, these were set up earlier. A lot of it was set up. A lot of these, are detailed in the book.
But he really scales them up.
He energized the network, which had fallen into disuse in the years of Golwalkar. Vishwa Hindu Parishad, for instance, was formed in 1964. But it did nothing till 1984 almost. That period of almost 2 decades, it did nothing but hold annual camps. That's all that it did. Whereas Vishwa Hindu Parishad today is possibly the biggest factor behind the rise of the BJP. Had the VHP not been there and had it not championed the Ayodhya agitation, the BJP wouldn't have come from 2 to 88.
And another thing, Nilanjan, there's one place where you say that Balasaheb Devras's Vijayadashmi speech is being prepared, and somebody introduced some very harsh words, and he then tells that person that the RSS Sarsangh Chalak
is supposed to be much more nuanced.
Yes. Now, I found that interesting because somebody told me that for the first time, the present RSS chief Bhagwat, when this government came to power, the kind of very blunt near political statements, I mean actually political statements that he issues has never been issued by any previous RSS chief, like Ghar Wapsi, like all kinds of things which were very, very in your face statements, which would you say that progressively the RSS chief has become much more vocal politically also?
If we actually say it in the manner in which you are phrasing, that means that we are making the previous generation of RSS leaders as much greater people than they actually
No,
were.
it's not greater. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, just as people say that on the party side, they say that Advani made Vajpayee look good, Narendra Modi makes Advani look good, Yogi Adityanath makes Narendra Modi look good.
Seeing Narendra Modi, it appears that Alki Advani was a moderate leader.
So is there a similar pattern that you see among the RSS chiefs through the years, through the decades?
From that perspective, yes.
Yeah. Only from that perspective.
From that perspective, yes, and mainly because the previous Sarsang Chalaks, especially before Sudarshan, did not have to cope with a situation when one of the affiliates was also controlling the government. Sudarshan had this first problem, that it was under him, and for a few months before that with Rajju Bhaiya, that you had the BJP which was actually also running the government. In Mohan Bhagwat's time, it is much more blunt because the BJP is not running a coalition government. It happens to have partners in it, but really they are not necessary for the BJP.
So they could afford to bear their fangs.
Yes, so the BJP has, exactly. You want to use that word, I think, it's quite...
So in a sense, the fact of their basic ideological frame has remained the same. Hindu nationalism, looking at minorities as, especially Muslim minorities, as second-class citizens. The only thing is its articulation, its nuancing has been different by different people that you have profiled.
I think there is less of nuance, there is more of direct blunt speak. This is what has happened. It's primarily because of power and the arrogance which has come because of that. This has given them greater confidence in their ideology, and they think that they can no longer, there is no need to convince people, they can impose their political will on the others.
So that's great. Nilanjan, I hope your book, people pick up your book and from the bookstores and read it. It's
for reasons of my survival, I hope that it becomes a bestseller.
I can assure our viewers that this provides very, very interesting insights into some of the RSS Hindutva icons, whether they were RSS heads or whether they were people like Savarkar. They all coalesce into what today we see as the rise of Hindu nationalism. And the great thing about this movement is that it has durability, and they stay with their basic idea and basic ideological precepts. Thank you, Nilanjan.
Thank you, Venu.
Thank you.
To receive instant updates on all videos from The Wire, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Pay to support independent journalism. Click the link in the description and choose the amount you want to pay.